Okay, well, just about 12:02, so we'll get started here. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our September webinar, which will focus on LADWP's Comprehensive Affordable Multifamily Retrofit Program, which is also known as CAMR. My name is Renee Daigneault, and I'm the Managing Director for the LA Better Buildings Challenge. I've been with the team for about 5 years and started just as the EBEWE ordinance was signed into law. So it's great to see a program like CAMR come out that supports retrofits to existing buildings while advancing the city's environmental and equity goals. Before we jump in, a few housekeeping items to start. Attendee lines will be muted as usual to keep everything orderly, but please do submit any questions that come up using the Q&A tool. We'll do our best to leave time for questions at the end of the presentations. This webinar will be recorded, and the slides and recording will be sent out to you by the end of the week. We'll be using polls, and we'll be sending a survey at the end. We'd love to get your participation as well as your feedback on how we did. Next, we'd like to thank LADWP for sponsoring this webinar, and today you'll get to hear directly from their team members once we get into the presentation. So here's our agenda for today. We'll start by covering some background on why CAMR is important from both an equity and environmental perspective. Then we'll walk through the program, a program overview, some of the benefits and the application process. And then lastly, we'll give an update on EBEWE benchmarking, which is a prerequisite for CAMR participation. And then we'll use any remaining time to answer questions that may come up. I'd like to mention here that any questions that are project specific that we may not be able to get to on the call today can be directed to camerinfo@aeacleanenergy.org. We'll drop that in the chat. Don't worry about writing that down, but that is available to you if you have really specific questions about a project. Before I introduce our speakers, we'd like to keep things interesting and interactive by asking you all to participate in a brief poll so we can get a sense of who's here today. So my colleague Bethany, if you can go ahead and start the poll. And great. Okay, great. So it looks like we've got some utility folks, some property owners. So looks like we've got the right people in the room today. Let's see. Okay, so sorry, I'm just moving the poll out of my view. So moving on to our speakers, we're thrilled to have several people who are directly involved with the implementation of the CAMR program, so you'll be able to hear from them directly. And our speakers today are Daigneault Maya, who is the Supervisor of Efficiency Solutions at LADWP, Costanza Gonzalo, who is a Program Associate at the Association for Energy Affordability, and Angel Rodriguez, who is a Sustainable Housing Program Associate at the California Housing Partnership. So just thank you in advance to our speakers for joining us and all the prep leading up today. And with that, I will hand it over to Daigneault to get us started with an overview of building equity.
Thank you very much, Renee. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to speak with all of you today. My name is Daigneault Maya, and I'm the supervisor for LADWP's Comprehensive Affordable Multifamily Retrofits Program, also known as CAMR. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is the largest municipal utility in the nation. And as a public utility, we belong to the people of the city of Los Angeles. Our ratepayers are our customer owners. We are in service to them, and we will continue to create programs that are in the best interest of our customers. CAMR is one of those programs. It is one of the most consequential programs we offer at LADWP. CAMR will focus on equity, employment, and the environment. CAMR bridges the gap between our goals and our customers' needs. Can you please go back to the previous slide? Thank you. So these data points on this slide demonstrate the need for a program like CAMR. We have a significant number of customers who are low income, and there are more than 400,000 affordable housing units in the city of Los Angeles. We understand that there are members in our communities who have been underserved and who have not historically participated in high numbers in our programs. CAMR will target these communities that have the highest needs in saving energy and water, reducing bills, and improving their living conditions. COVID-19 impacts have been hard felt by many in Los Angeles. Half of our city's census tracts are disadvantaged, equating to 1/4 of the state's total. Environmental equity is a priority for LADWP and Angelenos alike. LADWP worked with community stakeholders to identify and target communities to reduce high concentration of risk to disadvantaged communities. Through CAMR, LA will prioritize helping these communities achieve the program benefits. Next slide, please. So while focusing on equity, employment, and environment, CAMR will make positive impacts to our community, tenants, and multifamily property owners. Our community benefits through reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and maximizing benefits to disadvantaged communities. Tenants benefit by realizing lower energy cost and improvements in safety, comfort, and indoor air quality. And multifamily property owners benefit by realizing improved operating cost, equipment upgrades, and assistance with EBEWE benchmarking compliance. Next slide, please. CAMR supports achieving LA's sustainability goals set forth in LA's Green New Deal and LA 100. CAMR will help improve air quality, support decarbonization, encourage beneficial electrification, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. CAMR will encourage and incentivize rooftop solar that benefits both property owners and tenants. These initiatives will support the city of Los Angeles in achieving a future with 100% renewable energy and zero carbon. Next slide, please. CAMR aims to bring utility savings for both tenants and property owners. CAMR will support decarbonization and beneficial electrification through property upgrades and retrofits. And CAMR will support skilled, family-supporting green jobs for our communities. CAMR will achieve these goals by providing robust incentives and free technical support to eligible participants. CAMR also includes level playing field provisions that require contractors to pay prevailing wages and adhere to skilled and trained workforce requirements. Next slide, please. CAMR will leverage existing LADWP programs, one of which is LADWP's Virtual Net Energy Metering Pilot Program, also known as VNEM. Through the VNEM pilot program, both tenants and property owners will benefit from solar production. The VNEM pilot program is administered on a first-come, first-served basis. VNEM is limited to a maximum of 5 megawatts, with 4.88 megawatts remaining as of August 31st, 2022. It is also important to note that the VNEM pilot program used to have a 5-project maximum cap, but that maximum cap has been removed. Through the VNEM pilot program, LADWP will purchase the solar produced at the customer's property. A minimum of 40% of the solar energy purchase price must be distributed to tenants. LADWP will continually evaluate additional solar opportunities through CAMR. Next slide, please. Eligible projects participating in both CAMR and VNEM may be able to receive an incentive payment towards their solar project cost as described in the table. The incentives range from $2.30 to $4.70 per watt based on both the solar system size and the utilization of other leverage types, such as income tax credits and low-income housing tax credits. Next slide, please. We understand you may have additional questions about the VNEM pilot program. We encourage everyone to visit LADWP's solar website to read more about the VNEM program. You may also email or call the VNEM team using the contact information provided on this slide. I will now hand it back to Renee.
Great. Thank you so much, Daigneault. Wonderful to see the inclusive nature of this program and the up-to-the-minute information on the new program attributes. Next, I'm going to hand it over to Angel to provide an overview of CAMR. But before he gets started, let's do a quick pulse check to see how many of you are already familiar with the program. So I'll give you 30 seconds. You should see the poll pop up on your screen. Okay. Okay, I think we can close it now. Okay, great. So looks like we have quite a few people, 27%, they're hearing about it for the first time, and then a little over half have heard about it but are not yet in the interest list. So you're in the right place. And yeah, thanks for the participation. That's always helpful to know to whom we're speaking. So with that, I will hand it over to Angel for the CAMR overview.
Thank you, Renee. Hello, everybody. My name is Angel Rodriguez. I'm out here on behalf of the partnership. Over the next couple of slides, I will be covering information on the whole streamlined process that CAMR offers all throughout their free technical assistance, the different co-leveraging opportunities that property owners have available, and incentive levels, and pretty much an overall list of different energy efficiency measures that are offered through CAMR. And so one program, one point of contact, through CAMR single point of contact model. The program is pretty much streamlined for customers to be guided through project enrollment and through completion of construction. AEA's technical analyst provides the property owners with free technical assistance and scope development, in which it holistically captures the property needs and suitable measures for the both tenants and owners. Along with the EBEWE compliance education, property owners will be provided with a user guide. And this guide will pretty much detail a step-by-step process on how to further comply with EBEWE, which also stands for the Existing Buildings and Energy and Water Efficiency Program. In addition to assistance with contractor procurement, property owners do have the option to choose their own contractors, but they must also meet the program requirements. And next on to reducing operating cost, and lastly, ensuring that property owners can maximize incentives by leveraging other financial resources within LADWP or other exterior eligible energy efficiency programs. Next slide, please. Incentive levels. So the incentive structure for CAMR is based on the total amount of greenhouse gases expected to be avoided annually. If you want an idea of how much you can potentially receive, it is important to go through the CAMR process and to have someone from the technical assistance team go out on your site and pretty much conduct a free energy assessment. What this energy assessment will have is basically information on the building condition, the climate zone, pretty much a lot of the stance of the property, and determine the current baseline. This slide demonstrates the breakdown of the incentive levels. So for buildings with 5 to 64 units and measures that reduce owner paid energy cost, properties can receive up to 5,400 per metric ton of carbon dioxide. And tenants can receive up to 6,750 metric ton per carbon dioxide equivalent. Whereas for buildings with more than 65 units, and the measures that reduce owner-paid energy costs, properties can receive up to 6,200 per metric ton. And for measures that reduce tenant energy cost, properties can receive up to 7,750 per metric ton. In addition to the incentives that are listed above in this slide, there's also energy efficiency measures. CAMR will also provide incentives for upgrade electrical infrastructure and or utility services to support the building electrification of 750 per unit. We'll go on to the next slide. So eligible measures. What type of measures are eligible for incentives under CAMR? Properties have a wide variety of options to rehab on their site, as you can see on this slide. They can choose measures to improve the building shell, the space heating and cooling, water heating, lighting and appliances, and also renewable energy, which the solar component comes into this. And on the right, you'll pretty much see all the different lists of the measures that are offered through CAMR. These measures can be also further considered when the technical analyst completes the property assessment. However, I would say that it is important to highlight in the order of the property owners receive incentives, they must first achieve at least a required 5% of projected energy savings over their existing conditions. We can go on to the next slide. So stackable incentives, as I mentioned earlier, leveraging LADWP existing programs, as well as state programs that the property owner might be eligible for, is a part of the technical assistance that is offered through the program. CAMR is a whole building program, so the property might be able to also participate in programs such as the Home Energy Improvement Program, a direct install program, and there's also like the water conservation programs, which are also always important. And so overall, this layering of resources helps property owners and residents reduce utility bills while cutting the building's greenhouse gas emissions, and overall helping to create grid resilience on the property. We go on to the next slide. So requirements and intake over the next couple of slides, I'll be covering information on the program requirements and what exactly qualifies your property for CAMR. We go on to the next slide. Yeah, so what requirements are needed to be eligible for CAMR? At a minimum, the properties you submit must consist at least of 5 units or more. Anything that is below the 5 units will unfortunately not qualify for CAMR. The property must also meet the affordability requirement where at least 66% of units are at or below the 80% AMI, and also be located in a disadvantaged community, otherwise known as DAC. This is also determined by the most up-to-date CalEnvire Screen 4.0. However, if your property is not in a disadvantaged community, there's still an opportunity to also participate in CAMR. Property owners can show that with proof on their regulatory agreement, or also a provision of a public assistance program, such as like Section 8, the HAP contract. But I'll be covering this more on the next slide. And then lastly, through all of this, you must, the property owners must also agree to install energy improvements that equate to the 5% in energy savings. If you're a property owner that is able to achieve more than the required percentage, you may also be eligible to receive incentives for solar PV installations. We'll go on to the next slide. So eligible pathways. So through CAMR, the verification process kind of has these 5 different pathways that a property owner can go through in order to verify for their eligibility. Typically, it'll be common for nonprofit property owners to go through the first option, which is a regulatory agreement that is provided by either the federal, state, or local agency. Whereas for the for-profit owners or naturally occurring affordable housing, it is more common to go through option 5, which involves submitting rent roll documentation and basically also an assigned certificate that confirms the property's rent levels. However, if you're a property owner that there's other options available that a property owner can go through to complete the whole pre-screening process, such as option 2, that allows the property owners to provide the documentation of a public assistance program, as I mentioned earlier, the Section 8, the HAB contract, and so on. You kind of see right there listed. However, this also only applies if the owner is a public housing authority or also recognized as a 501c3 nonprofit housing organization. Then there's other documents like the CalFresh, the Medi-Cal, and so on. For option 3, it offers property tax welfare exemption. This option can be selected by a qualified nonprofit organization for low-income housing properties with no or expired regulatory agreement. And then lastly, for option 4, it is focused more on the income and affordability. This option ultimately requests pay stubs or annual tax returns, whereas option 5 verifies more of the gross rent paid, which includes the rent utility allowance and all that's included. And then, and yeah, this also can be further detailed and described whenever there's a scheduled interest call, and we'll kind of discuss that further on the call and just verifying documents as well. So if you're unsure, we'll help you through that as well. We'll go on to the next slide. So the program requirements. So aside from the eligibility pathways that CAMR offers to qualify, there are a set of requirements that all participants agree to comply with throughout their participation in the program. For instance, property owners must agree to maintain the income affordability for 10 years from the incentive payment. Ultimately, what this means is that the property owners must maintain the 66% of households at or below 80% AMI for the following 10 years. And that starts from the initial incentive payment. Moving on to the second one, share the property's utility data so that the assigned technical analyst can complete the energy assessment and see the property's building consumption. Moving on to the next one, the project must also be completed within 24 months. And lastly, participants must comply with the contractor requirements. And these requirements are also available in more detail on the terms and conditions, but I'll be also discussing more of this on the next slide. You can go on to the next slide. Yeah, so there are some pretty much, I would say, fundamental requirements for participating contractors. And so ultimately, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power has partnered with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, also known as IBEWE, and overall to develop level playing field requirements for the program. However, any contractors that are not within IBEWE can still participate in CAMR. However, they must pay a prevailing wage that is paid at the time that the work is performed, must meet the labor standard skilled and trained workforce requirements as established by the California trades. Electrical contractors must obtain their C10 electrical contractor license. And lastly, for projects that have more than the 65 units, contractors must meet the skilled and trained workforce requirements, where at least 60% of the skilled electrical journeys persons must be graduates of an apprenticeship program. And now I'll be handing it over to Costanza.
Thanks, Angel. Yeah, my name is Costanza and I'm with AEA. And I will go over a little bit of the technical assistance process that we've been talking through. And then I'll start talking about how to get started in the program. So the technical assistance involves receiving expert advice and help throughout the entire CAMR process. So after you submit an interest form, it includes a pre-screen of the project and portfolio for eligibility, a building assessment report detailing the property's existing conditions, and project-specific recommendations for potential energy efficiency and/or electrification measures for the project. Also, some information on the CAMR incentives. So they will develop a scope of work detailing potential measures for the project, as well as potential incentives according to those measures, and some education around EBEWE to benchmark for this property. Great. So how do you participate? So the first step is to complete an interest form on LADWP.CAMR.com, and we'll go over that in the next slide. Afterwards, you will receive, well, first you have some help in the eligibility process and making sure that you're eligible for the program. Then you can receive no cost technical support. We can help you hire we'll help you with the bidding for an appropriate contractor that meets the requirements, but then a contractor will install the property upgrades. And as long as you comply with all the program requirements, you can then claim financial incentives after construction. Great. Perfect. So let's go over the interest form and what you can expect. So this is the LADWP.CAMR.com website, which includes some basic information on the program, but we'll focus on the Apply Now button at the top where you can submit the interest form. So first, I want to point out this Save My Progress and Resume Later box. So if you expect to start this at one point but not finish it right away, we suggest that you put your email and you create a password so your process can be saved. This happens when you lose internet connection and then you lose all your work, and we don't want to see that happen. So we encourage folks to put their email and password so everything can get saved. And then we can start with property owner contact information. So the fields required here are first name, last name. We have Jack Skellington, email, phone number, company, and then the address for the company or for the property owner, one associated with the property owner. Perfect. Pumpkin King at Disney.com. Love to see that. And the next section is for an additional project contact. So if you are completing this on behalf of the owner, you would select yes in this section, and this would populate extra fields that you can fill out. So this applies for contractors or property managers, or if anybody who you're submitting this interest form on behalf of the property owner. We still need all the information of the property owner and communication with the property owner, but an additional contact can help them get started. And then we start with project information. So here we have some optional fields such as project start date and completion date. How did you hear about the program? And if you're interested in electrification, PV, and such. And then we have, are you applying for a single property or multiple properties? So if you select multiple, then additional fields will populate. So the first question is the type of multifamily housing. We have this question because condos are not eligible for this program, but rental housing is. So we would select rental housing. And then more fields would populate with that answer. So we have fields such as property name, LADWP account number, zip code, city, street. And then we have some questions on the number of units and ownership type. We have some optional questions on the total number of bathrooms, studios, one bedrooms, etc. Property square footage, year built, number of building stories, number of buildings, occupancy type, whether the property serves homeless or formerly homeless, and then languages spoken. And I want to highlight this button on the bottom right. So if you want to add another property under this application, you would just select that add another property button and fill more information for that. We accept up to 15 properties per interest form, as long as it's associated with the same property owner. And then that's it, then we're done. Then we would select I am not a robot and review and confirm. And yeah, it's okay. Maybe not all the fields are submitted, but you would review and confirm. And then I do want to highlight that this will take you to another page that will outline all the information that you've submitted, and you have to select another confirm button for us to receive that interest form. So if you just select this review and confirm, it's not completely a submitted application. But once you review that everything that you've submitted looks good, and you select confirm button on the next screen, then we will receive that interest form and we will follow up and schedule an intake call. Yeah, so after you submit the online interest form and you seem eligible for the program at first glance, we will schedule an intake call to go over the program a little bit more, talk through property details and that eligibility pathways that Angel was referring to. And then we would get into the first two forms of the program, the eligibility confirmation form, which outlines all the eligibility pathways, and then you select which pathway your property is choosing to go through. And then application part A, where you will agree to the terms and conditions of the program. And then we start with the EBEWE compliance and energy data request. Great, thank you. I'll hand it over to Renee.
Excellent. Thank you, Costanza. Great to see the application completed in real time there. To get started, we have another poll. This question is related to property size. That'll just help us understand whether or not your building is covered by the ordinance. So we'll give you a few seconds here. Okay, and I think we can close the poll. Okay, wow, 50-50 split. Great, well, thank you. So with that, we can go to the first slide, please. Okay, so EBEWE overview. So the existing buildings energy and water efficiency ordinance is designed to encourage building owners to reduce energy and water consumption through benchmarking and performance requirements. So for today, I'm going to be focused on the benchmarking piece, which is, the main step, or how owners think of this, is obtaining their aggregated data from DWP and SoCalGas. If your property receives natural gas data, then submitting that information to LADBS. That's done annually, and then the performance phase of the ordinance is really supported by, CAMR is a program that supports compliance with that requires reducing energy and water usage, or obtaining an audit and identifying measures and strategies to do so. So next slide, please. So right around the time the ordinance was passed in 2017, the LA Better Buildings Challenge developed the Resource Center. So Resource Center is, just as you'd imagine, designed to create resources to help owners comply, as well as help troubleshooting by responding to inquiries via email and through our contact form. Okay, next slide, please. Wanted to highlight open data here. We'll be sure to include the link in the follow-up, but when this ordinance first started, the city had always planned to share the information publicly, and it took a few years to get open data launched. It's a great resource. It's part of Mayor Garcetti's data dashboard, the whole open data platform. And you can use this resource to figure out if your building is in compliance, and you can see all of the benchmarking reports that have been submitted. So if someone else within your organization was tasked with compliance, you're just not sure where your building stands, that's a place you can you can refer to. You can also log into your LADBS account, but open data is really nice in that, there's no login, anyone can look at it. So it's a great quick place to find compliance information, as well as confirm the building ID for the property. Next slide, please. So here's just a list of the different compliance resources that we've designed to help owners with compliance. So the benchmarking guide, the ongoing reporting guide, those are designed to help owners that would like to do the work in-house. It is possible to do in-house. It's a detailed process. And so the benchmarking guide has screenshots that take you through each step, really intended to, provide some hand-holding through the process because it is detailed. And then the provider directory includes vetted service providers. We review their references and ensure that they've benchmarked within Los Angeles and that they're familiar with the ordinance requirements. And they're available to support owners who would like to hire someone to do the work on their behalf. I'll touch quickly on the navigator that is designed to help owners comply with the audit and retro commissioning component of the ordinance. And CAMR really supports compliance there as well. So that's really, participating in CAMR is a great first step to complete compliance with that section of the regulation. And then lastly, we have a contact form, so we help owners troubleshoot. Next slide, please. I got a little ahead of myself, kind of gave overviews of these items already. But here I wanted to point out that if your building is not covered by EBEWE, so if your building is under 20,000 square feet, it's not covered, you can still use the instructions in the guide to request your aggregated data, which is a prerequisite to participate in CAMR. We're currently working on a resource to help guide you through this. Because those properties don't have building IDs, there is an alternative compliance path. And there's also some steps in the guide that you don't have to complete. So I noted here, you complete sections 2 through 5, but you don't have to submit that data to the City of Los Angeles. You don't have to register with the LA Department of Building and Safety. So if you do fall into that category, stay tuned for that resource because the good news is it is possible to still get that data, but your process is just a little bit different since you're not covered. Next slide, please. So the ongoing reporting guide, this resource is for owners that have complied in a past year. So once you've done the work to set up the property and get automated data from the utilities, you don't need to complete all those steps. So the benchmarking guide is, about 70 pages. The ongoing reporting guide is, I think 4. So this directs you to the steps that you need to complete each year. But really the bulk of the effort's really that first year, getting everything set up. Then after that, it's just reviewing the data and submitting it to LADBS if you're covered by the ordinance. Next slide, please. So the provider directory here, we've just got a screenshot of it. So it includes some characteristics that can help you to see which providers could be most applicable for you based on the property types that they've worked with in the past. That's available at betterbuildingsla.com. Next slide, please. EBEWE Navigator, I touched on that. We have a beta version that we're launching, and this helps owners understand the audit and retro commissioning requirements of the ordinance. Next slide, please. So here are some key contacts, so who to contact for questions. This information is also in the benchmarking guide, so we're including it here just so it's easily at hand. But the guide also includes these details. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, ordinance update. So, and there's been a lot of questions and confusion around the information here. So certain deadlines are suspended due to COVID. So while the city is under emergency orders related to COVID, you are not required to comply with some of the guidelines or some of the deadlines. So the benchmarking deadlines for 2020 through 2022 are told, which another word for suspended. The first audit and retro commissioning deadline for 2021 was December 1st. That is told. December 1st, 2022 is still active. However, DBS has indicated through their frequently asked questions that they will likely toll that as the emergency has continued through September. So although that's not required to comply, it's really a good idea to just get ahead, use this time, leverage this time to get ahead, get your data. You will need to comply. They'll be announcing new deadlines, they've stated. So the reporting portal is open on the DBS website, so you can comply, and it's good to do that. Get the data. You have the data already, so there's no reason to wait. Next slide, please. Okay, well that brings us to our Q&A. So let me just go over to the Q&A screen. I saw some questions were coming in and people were responding as they go. Great, so I see a question coming in. It's about the savings requirement. It's now been updated to 5%. Is that energy or KWH? And I can send that question to AEA.
Sure. And hi, this is Nick Durr from AEA. I can take that question. So the requirement, the minimum energy efficiency requirement for the program is that there needs to be electricity-based energy efficiency measures, enough of those that the building can reduce its electricity consumption in kWh by 5% relative to its pre-retrofit whole building baseline. So that's inclusive of both common areas and apartments. So as long as there is sufficient energy efficiency measures that can document a 5% reduction in overall kWh, then the project would be eligible for CAMR, and it would open the door to additional incentive opportunities, including VNM and fuel substitution.
Great, thank you. Okay. Okay, question on, will AEA and CAMR analysis recommend other current DWP programs that can support energy efficiency or electrification? Send that to AEA.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. So we'll work with the property to identify all possible energy efficiency and electrification upgrades, and can help identify whether those upgrades are best incentivized via the CAMR program or referred to other LADWP programs that might be a better fit for those upgrade measures.
Great, thank you. Next question, are there pro forma requirements in the construction cost for a project? For example, cost per unit, total development cost, et cetera.
The main thing is we need to be able to understand what the cost is per measure. So when a project's reserved, there will be a number of measures that'll be identified, and the associated earned rebate for each of those measures. So we'll need to know the cost per measure. So for example, if they're doing a lighting system upgrade, we'll need to know the total cost for that lighting system upgrade.
Okay. Great. Okay. Just going over some of the previous questions in case there's ones we want to read aloud. A question came in: if the building is not covered by the ordinance, but I voluntarily benchmark, can I still apply for CAMR? The answer is yes. There, as I noted in my section, there is an alternative compliance process, or there's an alternative process for obtaining your aggregated data from the utilities. So go ahead and apply through the CAMR website, and then we're developing a resource so we can share that with you on the back end and make sure you have the information you need. Were there any other previous questions? DWP, did you want to speak to some of the questions on VNM?
I believe I can, there was a question about VNEM regarding coordination with AEA and CAMR and the VNEM project. So Ronik, would you like to address that one?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to say that from the onset of CAMR, you know, we've collaborated together to figure out how to structure the program effectively and ensure that we can integrate, you know, projects that are eligible for the solar piece through CAMR. You know, they can also, in essence, be eligible for the virtual net energy metering pilot program. So in essence, so long as you meet the minimum requirements and also meet our requirements as far as VNEM is concerned, you know, you should be able to take advantage of both programs per se. So, you know, I know there's probably a lot of questions. So if you have specific questions related to VNEM, we have a dedicated inbox at vnem@ladwp.com where we can, you know, just take any questions you have, or you can also contact us directly at our number at 213-367-2100.
Great, thank you. And we'll be sure to include all of the contact emails that we've referenced throughout the presentation in the follow-up so that they're close at hand. Okay, any final questions? Great, okay, then I think with that, we can go to the key takeaways to quickly summarize what we've reviewed today. So CAMR, as the title indicates, is a very comprehensive program, and it's really a landmark opportunity for affordable multifamily housing, with, you know, very comprehensive, including reduction of operating expenses, greenhouse gas emissions, as well as supporting the local economy. Technical support is provided along the way, from the time of application to the intake call. We're there to help you as you go through the process. And then lastly, EBEWE benchmarking, just a reminder, that's always a great practice to know how your building's operating and performing, and it's a compliance for prerequisite. And if your building's not covered by the ordinance, you're still able to obtain that aggregated data from the utilities and get ahead of performance requirements. So we'll move into closing with a quote. So environmental protection doesn't happen in a vacuum. One can't separate the impact on the environment from the impact on our families and communities. I think this is a very fitting quote. You know, the environmental movement, equity has always been important, and we've really reached a time and place where we're physically seeing that, you know, all of these programs, moving the needle on the environment, needs to also move the needle on equity, and I think that's really one of the best things about CAMR, is that inclusive approach. Okay, I think we have a few more slides. So we have a few upcoming events we wanted to highlight. Our October webinar will be focused on the launch of our building technology directory. So this includes a variety of different technology solutions that can help your building operate more efficiently. And then there will be ongoing educational workshops like this to help customers who are interested in CAMR. So please stay tuned for updates there. You can sign up for CAMR workshop updates at LADWPCAMR.com. So please do so. We'll also be sure to highlight that in the follow-up communication. And then lastly, for questions, you can contact the CAMR team. They're happy to help. I think that's the last slide. Yes, okay. So thank you all for your participation today. The questions, the poll, it's really wonderful to have that type of engagement. And yeah, thank you all. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to DWP. Thank you to the LABBC team for all the coordination. Appreciate all of the effort there, and we hope to see you next month.